The armor's relative thickness is higher than the shell's penetration capability. The shell hit a screen or an external module, lost energy, and failed to penetrate the main armor. A ricochet occurred. Any of these events can happen, thanks to either the designers who've taken care of the vehicle's protection and equipped it with thick and well-sloped armor, or the commander's decision. This tank doesn't have thick and sloped armor, but an experienced player would position it in such a way that shells hit the armor at more than 70 degrees to the normal and ricochet. In this case, we say the tank is in a side-scraping position. If the vehicle turns further, the risk of penetration increases. Greater angles are required against stronger guns. The techniques to protect your tank are well known. Here are the most popular ones. Blocking damage with the turret. Blocking damage with the hull's front. Side scraping and blocking damage with the side. Reverse side scraping. Forcing the enemy to shoot. These tricks are also accompanied by hull dancing, which means wobbling your hull and turret. This makes it difficult for the enemy to aim and fire at your vulnerable spots. It may seem that everything's simple, roll out and block damage, but we fight battles on different maps and face different enemies. How do I choose the technique that works best? First of all, you should take a closer look at your tank. Let's start with the turret and assess the armor thickness. If its official values are about the same or higher than the penetration potential of most enemies in battle, everything's great. The tank will avoid damage effectively. If the values are lower, all is not lost yet. Let's take a look at the turret shape. If it is streamlined, the armor can meet the shell at an angle. The relative armor will be much thicker than the nominal armor, and the thick gun mantlet will become a nice extra piece of protection. A turret like this should be kept straight towards the enemy and not expose its sides. What can be easier than that? If you hide your hull, you can resist enemy shells and fire in response. Doing this when you have the IS-7 is unequaled pleasure. The ideal shape. If your turret has a rectangular shape, it's a bit more difficult. The gun mantlet can still take a blow, but the turret cheeks will be penetrated by virtually anything. To protect yourself, you can turn the turret and put it in a side-scraping position. This will increase the nominal armor thickness. However, if you overdo it, the enemy can penetrate the side, so it's important to remember the ricochet angles. After the enemy has fired a shot, you can fire in response and return to the starting position. The geometry becomes especially interesting when you're facing several enemies. You've got to block shells coming from different directions while firing in return. In this situation, it's important to turn the turret to an impenetrable angle to the enemy that is about to shoot. These are the basics of playing your turret. These techniques will work if you're behind cover on a horizontal surface and manage to hide the tank's hull. You can use arcs, embankments, terrain features, destroyed tanks, etc. And it doesn't matter where your turret is mounted on the hull or how good the elevation and depression angles are. Problems can arise if you meet an experienced enemy who aims for your weak spots, so you should learn to protect them. Here's the commander's cupola. In most cases, it's quite easy to penetrate this part. This one is small, so moving back and forth is enough to make it difficult for the enemy to aim. Some commander's cupolas are big. In this case, you should choose a position from which the enemy will see only the part of your tank's turret that doesn't have vulnerable spots. If that's impossible, you can go for another variant. Turn the turret like this, and the cupola disappears. Magic, isn't it? Life becomes more colorful when your tank's gun depression angle is more than 8 degrees. Hills, mountains, and other sloping surfaces become your best friends. You hide your hull and meet the enemies in full control of the situation. This is how you can protect the commander's cupola and thin turret roof. If you get to sloped terrain, these parts will become a difficult target. However, a lot depends on where the turret is attached to the hull. If it's closer to the rear, you can forget about taking position on top of a hill. you're better off riding down to the foot of the hill. However, even small depression angles aren't critical for a tank with strong armor. You could look for a good place on irregular terrain and position your vehicle so that you can fire conveniently without exposing your weak spots. Now, here's a trick that works for tanks with a strong turret. There's an unexpected way to use terrain. We're all used to tanks moving on a horizontal surface, and so we look for relevant shelters. Now look at the foot of the mountain. The enemies are waiting around the corner. They're aiming at the place where the front wheel will appear. This is what usually happens, and this is why nobody wants to attack first. But there is a way out. You should climb up a slope. Now it works like a regular hill, hiding your lower glacis plate and allowing you to absorb damage with the turret. Just look at this from a different angle. Sometimes the slope can help even in hopeless situations. Climbing up with the rear, using irregularities like piles of debris on Himmelsdorf. And even if we don't win the battle, 1 or 2 shots could grant a mark of excellence on the barrel. This is basically all the theory on soaking up damage with the turret. If it seems simple to you, that's great. Now it's time to engage all your mental capabilities. We proceed to the hull, the largest and most sophisticated part of a tank. Following tradition, we'll start with the hull's front. It would have been nice to have thick armor here, so that no one could penetrate it at all, but then the tank would be very slow. Seeking a balance between protection and mobility, designers experimented with the shape. Here we will take a look at different variants of a hull's front and see how they can help you survive in battle. Let's start with this one. It's the pike nose. It consists of sloped armor plates. The sharper their angle, the thicker their relative armor. Front armor like this is effective when it's directed straight towards the enemy. Your task is to find piles of debris and terrain irregularities to hide the vulnerable lower glacis plate. And then just stay still. Still doesn't mean completely motionless. Even the thickest front armor has vulnerable spots. And you shouldn't let the enemy aim at them. So dance. Back and forth a bit, left and right a bit. If you turn the pike nose too much, the relative armor thickness decreases, the chance of penetration increases. Forget about shootouts from around corners. When facing an enemy of equal strength, play defensively. Move out to fire when the enemy is reloading. When playing tanks that have a straight front, with vertical armor plates, you have to work a bit harder. You see an enemy? Put the hull in a side-scraping position. Like with the turret, you should take the correct angle, otherwise the enemy will penetrate your side. The best solution is to find shelter, from which you'll expose only your front part at a ricochet angle. Tease them. In most cases, the adversary will take the bait and fire,